Part two of episode 5 with Josh Morse starts now. We take a deeper look into his days from detectives and on. Stay tuned to find out what happens next. Welcome back, folks. This is the second episode of the Knock and Talk show with Josh Morse.
Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back.
Thank y'all for staying with us.
A brief recap of what we went through in episode 1. Josh walked us through his life before law enforcement, a little intro into who is Josh B. Morse, J-Mo, as I like to call him. J-Mo, that's right. But then we went into his academy days and that 10-week struggle of not living at home Monday through Friday. And then the selection process into his first agency where he and I met, and I had the esteemed honor of being his sergeant on the morning watch shift at a very small slow speed agency, and encouraged him to look to greener pastures. And ultimately, Josh moved on to a high speed department. We talked through his uniform days and his first chase, and there's probably oodles of fun stories that we stepped over.
Right.
Getting into your CID days. We've talked about some career advice, career struggles. Both of us have a lot in common in the fact that we were selected reluctantly to get into CID as young patrol officers in our career and what that was like. And now we just learned, well, not now, before.
Right.
I feel like in Spaceballs. When is this happening? It's happening now. When's now? Now. But before now, not now, before now, we learned there was your first call out.
Right.
Home invasion. It was a bit of a struggle.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of moving parts in a home invasion.
Right.
You know, you've got the burglary aspect. You've got the victims if there were injuries.
2 victims, 2 female victims.
So you have now potentially sexual assaults or homicide. You have the theft aspects.
Yep.
You've got the collection of evidence. You've got interviews. You've got to go to either the hospital or if the perp's found later. Now you've got to go and leave scene 1 to scene 2 where perp has been collected.
Right.
There's a lot of moving parts to home invasion. Right. So it can, for a young detective, even for a seasoned detective, home invasion is a bit of a struggle.
Right. It is. And there were, I want to say there was at least 5, maybe 6 suspects to that case.
Okay.
2 victims, 2 female victims, 5, maybe 6 male suspects to that case. And they were all in DeKalb County. The male suspects were based out of DeKalb County,
which is a county just south of one that you were working in.
Right. So that was challenging to try to coordinate with another agency, let alone the ins and outs of investigations, how they work, the typical procedures and typical flow of CID and how they work, and along with working with another agency to try to coordinate with them and school resource officers with another agency.
Oh, wow.
To try to coordinate of getting those suspects, because those suspects were with, at the time they were in high school, to try to coordinate getting them pulled from class, and not only pulled out of class, but pulled out of the school to bring back to our agency to interview, and then getting them put back, and whether or not to call for, to call their parents, to let them know what was going on.
I assume they were juveniles.
They were.
Okay.
Some were.
Somewhere.
Yeah, majority were. And so that was challenging.
Yeah.
And so that really tested my limits as to whether I needed to be in investigations at that time or not. And as I said in the previous episode, I was very thankful for that lieutenant and his honesty in trusting me and my abilities at that time to move forward with my selection and trust me to make the right decisions and the time. He was very hands off, but at the same time, he was very cautious and monitoring our decisions and what we were doing to move forward with our particular investigations at the time.
Okay.
So he had that good balance of trusting the officer and their abilities while also recognizing their abilities and making their own decisions, not only in case they mess up. He found that line. He was aware of that line of making that, letting that officer make that decision to recognize if they were to fail, that it was only a minor fail and not a major fail.
So if you started going down the wrong rabbit hole,
yes,
he was able to pull you back. But if it was just a left turn in Albuquerque,
yeah,
you were able to make U-turn, come back.
If it was a blue pill, it was fine.
Yes.
If it was a red pill,
thank you, Morpheus.
Thank you.
Why didn't I take the blue pill?
Right.
Because of the blue lights.
He did. Yeah. Right. So that was a very humbling case. It challenged me. As I said in the previous episode, he recognized that was a turning point in my career as an investigator, as to whether this was going to make me or break me as an investigator. And I stuck with it. Thank the Lord that I stuck with it and continued down that path of investigations. And I wouldn't say that I have regrets of not going for K-9, because I want to say it was around 6 months, maybe not even then, after I applied for and was selected to become an investigator, that a K-9 position became available after the previous handler retired, and there was a position available that an opportunity became available. And I want to say it was less than 6 months. And so there was a real internal struggle with me. If you're in law enforcement, there's always that opportunity that becomes available if you're selected for a different position, and a position that you've always wanted becomes available. There's always that internal struggle of, should I stay with what I committed to, or should I put in for my dream of becoming such and such position or such and such officer? That was a really tough decision to, in my particular situation, turn away from.
Yeah.
Even the chief of that agency came to me or pulled me in and said, "This position is coming available. Is this something that you're still interested in?" Even at the time when I was still with the agency that we were at, thankfully, because you were such a.
You're gonna make me blush.
I am.
Don't make me blush.
I am. Sorry.
Jeez.
Because you were such a good supervisor and you allowed me the opportunity to train with another agency, to do that ongoing training off the books while still maintaining my position at the agency that we were with, giving me that experience, giving me that training, off the books training that would go forward with a career, a lifelong career of, in this particular situation, canine, opportunities and experience that are priceless. And you afforded me that opportunity. And so looking into the time, the experience that I had put in, it was tough to turn away from.
Sure.
But it was the correct move, looking back on it. And that was tough to turn away from. I had a fellow officer at the time of that agency that I was with came to me and said he was interested in canine as well, and asking me if I was going to put in. And I told him, I wasn't sure. I really wasn't, because that was the ultimate goal at the time. That was the reason, that was what I had hanging over me when I left the agency that you and I were with. That was the goal at the time. And so that was tough to turn away from. But I told him, I wasn't sure. And ultimately, with the chief coming to me and saying, this is the opportunity that's available. Are you still interested in it? You feel an obligation to commit to that position. But once again, as we said in the previous episode, we have to do that pros and cons list. We have to weigh what is best for our family, because that's the ultimate goal, is our family, is our primary concern. And so at that time, I felt it best to stay where I was, being so new to investigations. The lieutenant had given me the opportunity, even though I wasn't his first pick. Not only did I feel an obligation to stay where I was with him, since he put his faith and trust in me, not only did I feel an obligation to return that favor, but I also felt that it was the best decision for my family to stay where I was.
Yeah.
And looking back, as I said before in the previous episode, it was the best decision that I made. That for those of you that are out there that are contemplating those career moves, those career changes, trust your heart, trust what your family's input, trust those decisions, even though they may not seem right to your personal self, but also your family's. Trust those decisions, what your heart is telling you to move forward in your career.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a very tough decision, but glad I didn't.
And a good one.
It was great.
How long did you spend in CID?
CID, 5 years.
A lot of experience in 5 years.
A lot of experience.
Yeah. In that 5 years, was there ever a case that just absolutely made you laugh?
There was a couple. One was that call out while I was on training. I remember going to the school for a follow-up interview on the victim, and one of the victims, because there was two.
Right.
One of the females, we didn't have body cameras at the time. CID, criminal investigations division did not have body cameras at the time. So
your CID has body cams now?
They now have body cameras.
For interviews?
Correct.
Okay.
For interviews. If you're out in the field, if you're not bringing the suspect, victim, witness back to the police department, they now have body cameras so you can interview victim, witness, suspect in the field and document that interview.
Pretty high speed.
High speed.
Pretty high speed.
And we did not have those at the time. They weren't issued to us. So I utilized a GoPro to document that interview. And so
GoPro is not a paid sponsor. Could be.
It is not.
Everybody knows anybody at GoPro.
Right.
Continue.
And so I remember going to that particular high school to investigate or to interview that victim and setting my GoPro up on the table in one of the conference rooms of the front office of that high school and set my GoPro up. I had my partner across the desk from me and the victim at the end of the table interviewing her. And at the end of the interview, I didn't realize it at the time, but after going back and reviewing the video from my GoPro, once I got back to the office, I realized at the end of the interview, and this was game changing for this case.
Okay.
I remember reviewing that video, making notes on the interview. At the end of that interview, my partner at the time, we stood up and we both turned the opposite direction of the victim. So the victim was kind of to our back, so to say. The victim noticed, obviously, that we had a GoPro in the middle of the desk, and she chose that opportunity to take a pose for the GoPro and just kind of drop a deuce,
okay,
so they say, and just kind of did one of those.
Yeah. All right.
To the camera.
Yeah.
All right. And I thought that was very odd for a home invasion victim, someone that was a victim to sexual assault, and burglary / robbery.
Yeah.
To have that kind of mentality to kind of give one of those numbers.
Little IG pose.
Yes, right.
Okay.
To the camera. And like I said, that was kind of a game changer for that investigation. It kind of changed our whole, or at least my thought process to, was this an actual victim to this case? I wouldn't think that a true victim would have that mentality to strike a pose.
Sure.
At the end of an interview about a serious offense such as home invasion, burglary, robbery.
Robbery.
Did I say that? Robbery.
That was robbery.
Robbery.
16 dash.
Robbery.
8 dash. Robbery. Anyway, robbery.
Yes. So that really changed the course of that investigation. So that was that. Looking back on it now, that kind of gave us a good
kind of
aha moment. What was the other one?
While you're thinking on that, I'll share one.
Yes, tell me.
So I was in burglary.
Okay.
So our agency was the largest in the county and had different focused units within the CID.
Right.
So the entering detectives or investigators normally ended up in one of two units, or three. I'm sorry, one of three units. NCID to start off with, all the green ones. You either went to burglary, you went to auto theft, or financial crimes.
Okay.
Those are all the property crimes.
Yep.
You start off there, and
Yep.
then you sort of picked up expertise, specialized knowledge, and things that you could either stay in that unit, or if a person's crime opened up, like robbery, homicide, or special victims.
Yes.
Because those were the only two upscale, if you will, units within our agency. So you start off one of the three property crimes, and then you could move to a person's crime. So I went to burglary, and I spent a year to the day in burglary. And one of the big cases we had at the time, there was a construction boom going on in the county before the bubble burst. So this was like 2005, maybe 2004, 2005. And we had a bunch of these construction site burglaries. So homes that were partially completed, not 100%, but appliances were put in, fixtures were put in, things like that. So we started doing midnight missions as a unit, and going to the heavier hit areas within the county to do sting operations. See if we can't catch them in the act, stakeouts, if you will. Boring, by the way, especially if you have somebody eats a lot of protein bars. Awful. It's awful. Anyway, so we ended up catching a guy.
Yeah.
And that led into a huge ring. It was an international ring. And I won't go into a lot of like personal detail into that, or specific detail into that. But we ended up finding the ringleader, and we did a search warrant on his house to collect some property.
Okay.
Yeah. Almost 80% of the home was built with stolen property. Wow. Yeah. Air conditioning units, the external and internal doors, all of the appliances, the above ground pool, the fixtures, so the lights, the handles on the cabinets. I mean, this literally was a purpose-built perp home. So once the case was adjudicated, we held a come get your stuff event where if the victim could prove something was theirs, then they got to take it back. Yeah. So off went the front door. It was a beautiful mahogany door. In fact, so well built that the burglary unit, we had our own entry team. Like we did our own either knock and talks. Like what I did there. Yeah. We either did our own knock and enter or no knock enter warrants.
Right.
And quite often, burglaries are involved in dope.
Yep.
So there was always a potential factor of firearms anywhere there's dope.
Right.
So we would not occasionally, but quite often do no knock search warrants.
Right.
Well, this was one because the ringleader was an international fugitive that killed police officers in Switzerland on a prison break. So he was a pretty bad dude.
Yeah.
So we did the no knock, and we had what we called the key. It was a mini battering ram.
The universal key.
Yes. And the key holder, back to the Matrix. The key holder was a big dude, like a big dude. Not just, he was like, he had tree trunks for fingers. Yeah. He was a big dude. He was hitting this door so hard, the house shook, never opened. Never opened. Like you could see it bow.
Right.
But it didn't come undone. Like we had to go to the back door and beat the back door in. But anyway, so we were holding the come get your stuff event.
Yeah.
And the front door went, the appliances went, the interior doors, because they were from a high-end builder that marked things. So there were special marks on them.
Okay. Right.
So they were able to identify. So the interior doors went, the light fixtures went, the appliances went, the above ground pool.
Okay.
The liner didn't, but all of the
structure,
mechanical equipment and the platform built around it, that all went. The AC units went.
Did the water in the pool? Did it go?
That's why they didn't take the liner.
Okay.
They took the deck that was built around it.
Right.
And all of the mechanical equipment. So when they unplugged some of the hoses, the water came out. But once that liner stretched and the water,
there's no going back.
You can't refill it because it'll never be the same again. So anyway, that was a funny story that we had. I don't know if you laughed, but it was fun for us.
Yeah.
We took down an international burglary ring or construction site theft ring.
Right.
And when they were done disassembling this home, it looked like toothpicks.
Yeah.
The only thing left was really the drywall and the roof, which we believed were stolen shingles, but you can't reuse that.
Right.
So that was a fun story. There's plenty more where that came from, but
right.
Yeah. My sergeant at the time, he has since passed, but he earlier in the other episode, first episode, we discussed that gray area that's still covered by case law,
right?
That defense attorneys don't like, but it's still legal.
Yep.
And then knowing where that finite line is.
Yep.
This particular sergeant enjoyed the extra gray.
Yeah.
That was dancing on top of the line, and I didn't see eye to eye with a lot of his belief system in, let's just say, Fourth Amendment searches,
right,
or the protection thereof,
right.
He wasn't my favorite supervisor at all.
Yeah.
But he had some very interesting tactics that some of which I used, most of which I didn't use.
Yeah.
There's some funny stories there, but
it's interesting how you pick tids and bits from not only your coworkers, your peers, but also the supervisors that you're under.
Yeah. It's what makes you your individual officer. So that's
it does.
In the agency I came up in, we had a pretty extensive FTO program. You went to 2 different precincts and you worked on 2 of the 3 shifts at each precinct.
Okay.
So you had as many as 4 FTOs.
Yeah.
Okay. And in my case, I think I had 6 FTOs because 2 of mine ended up going on vacation during the summer months that I was in FTO.
Yeah.
So I had stand-ins for a week. I learned a lot and from different styles of policing.
Yeah.
Same laws. The words are the exact same.
Right.
But the understanding of them and the enforcement of them. You've got what I now call rookie law, and you've got seasoned law.
Right.
Same law.
Yeah. Right.
Same law, but it's how you use it.
Interpret it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lawyers. Yeah.
Yes.
Because lawyers. The rookie law, that's what it says. Boom. Words.
Right.
Words.
Yeah.
On paper, words. Seasoned law, yes, words won't hold.
Yeah. It's what's not there.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's what's not there.
Yeah. Good point.
Sometimes it's not it's what's not there that's there.
Right.
That we can put there.
Yeah. And that's
because it's not there.
That's where case law comes in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And understanding, reviewing your case law.
Yes.
Is what's going to save you come to court.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
So back to you.
Yes.
Enough of me for now.
Okay.
Back to you. 5 years in CID.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of knowledge because you were generalized, right?
Generalized. We started off specialized. So when I came up, there was, as you said, in your agency was kind of similar in our agency. So there was, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 detectives in my agency as far as investigators go. So there was 6 different. There was auto theft, white collar crimes, which was the financial crimes.
Yeah.
There was special victims, sexual assault, and then 2 to 3 general, which was property crimes, burglary, theft, things of that nature. So they were specialized when I came up. And while I was in investigations, we had a change in supervisors, and a new supervisor, lieutenant, came in and decided we needed to be more generalized and spread the love, so to speak.
Okay.
And so we became more versatile. We got to the point where I can't remember the agency that you were with. Tell me again how y'all, because y'all would have on call.
Yeah.
So how would y'all work?
We had 2
on
shifts.
call?
We had day shift and evening watch, and they were both 8-hour shifts, right? And then come 11 o'clock, you had on call for overnight hours. And then over the weekend, you also had weekend duty. So you would get 24 hours of Saturday and 24 hours of Sunday. The wee hours of Sunday, the Monday person that was on call would be called in if it was big enough Sunday night. So the weekend Sunday on call detective would be called in if he or she needed help. The one that was on call for Monday night would actually get called in Sunday night, come in early before shift.
All right.
Yeah. So you had technically the overnight hours of your weekday shift, but halfway through, depending on your unit supervisor's internal rule, either you would cover the whole night, so from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
If something happened after 6 a.m., day watch would get called in early.
Okay.
Yeah. Or some of the sergeants in the units, you would only have half of that overnight, and then day watch would get called in early.
Okay. Just
so you were rested to come in evening watch to pick up where they left off, depending on the case. So, there was the rule, and then each unit sort of had its own internal rule as to how they ran things.
Right. Okay. So since there was 6 of us, we would, because our pay periods at the agency that I was with, our pay periods would start on Friday mornings at 8 a.m. And we would go 24/7 for a week.
Okay.
From that Friday morning, 8 a.m. until the following Friday morning at 8 a.m., we would be on call 24/7 as an investigator. And so anything and everything that got that required an investigator, we would field that call. Even up until Friday morning at 6 a.m., we would get called out to, we would have to handle. And so, as I said, the new lieutenant that came up, And even before with my initial supervisor, anything that you would get called out on, even being specialized with, when I came up, I was in burglary, property crimes, with whatever came out, the home invasion, we would have to work.
Yeah.
And so
that was, home invasion is nothing more than a burglary.
It is not. Right.
There's in Georgia, there's no crime called home invasion. Right. It's a media term used.
It is.
It's a burglary.
Mm-hmm.
And the violent crime that happens inside during the home invasion is the felony to meet the elements of the burglary crime.
Right. Correct.
Yeah. So you break in for an unlawful reason without permission to commit a theft or felony therein. That's the generalized term or elements for burglary.
Right.
It's still a burglary.
Right. Home invasion just makes it known that a victim is
inside the house,
or residence or whatever it is, the structure.
Yeah, so we as burglary detectives would get those home invasions, and robbery homicide would only take over if there was a victim.
Okay.
They would take over if the victim was shot, stabbed, kidnapped, whatever. If it was sexual assault, sometimes they would take it, but they would call in special victims because special victims was more geared towards the sexual interviews, sexual victim or victims of sex crimes. Most of what they did is child crimes.
Right.
They would assist. So on a home invasion, you could potentially have burglary, robbery, homicide, and special victims all in the same case.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, we would get called out for whatever with the new lieutenant. He kind of generalized everything. We would get whatever would come out, even during the week. The general cases that would come up from uniform, he would just assign out at random. And so we became more versatile from that point on, getting whatever frauds, white collar, burglary.
I see the point to that.
Yeah. I mean, it became, it made us more well-rounded.
Sure. I understand both. Mm-hmm. In certain aspects, you need a more specified, trained person.
Yeah, right.
But you also need other people to understand that training so that one, when it's their turn to move up, they can. Mm-hmm. Two, if that unit needs help, there's somebody that's already somewhat qualified to help. Mm-hmm. So I get both. I do know this. After your 5 years in CID, you have been recently promoted to sergeant.
Indeed.
So congrats. That was just a couple months back.
It was.
Kicked back out to the road.
Kicked back out.
And now, with 5 years of CID, of a well-rounded CID, so you've done special victims because we've talked about those.
Yes.
You've done homicides, you've done robberies, you've done financial crimes, auto theft, burglary, of course. Mm-hmm. Now, as a patrol supervisor, would you agree that that's made you more qualified to be a patrol sergeant than, say, somebody who rose up through the ranks of just patrol and then, due to time in service, was promoted?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Going back on the previous episode where we discussed, even the decision of going for K9, if that was, at the time, that was the primary goal, that was at the time, that was a tough decision, even to back away from, to say no, to realize that I needed to say, no, I need to pass this up. Yeah. That was a tough decision at the time, but looking back on it now, that gave me exponentially more experience, more training, more knowledge that I needed to move forward, to have me progress as a supervisor, to have those tools in the bank,
right,
to pass on,
yeah,
to others. And so, yeah, that was huge. I can't, at the time, I didn't realize what was going on, what was taking place, but it was huge. To have that now, that was huge. And it even to look back at the promotional process, for that agency, to look back at the previous, let's just say, the previous 6 promotions that has taken place, all but one has come out of investigations. And so that should tell you something, both with an outside agency coming in to test for promotions,
okay,
to do a personality profile, and to do psychological-esque test questions to gauge how your mind works, and prioritizing things, delegating things. They kind of test for that to see how you would function as a supervisor. And so for an outside agency to come in and to recognize that at least 4 out of those 5 previous applicants came out of CID, that says something, that investigations gives you a different mindset, a different way of thinking, to aid you as a supervisor. That says something to me. This is not a law enforcement company that comes in and tests. It's just a general testing company that gauges psychologically how your mind works. And there are a lot of parallels that kind of go along with law enforcement, that make, they help make good fits for law enforcement. But, to have that, outside agency say, yeah, he's going to work good as a supervisor. And, it's been proven, our track history shows, these supervisors have come from investigations. They have a good working knowledge of investigations, and it plays out. And that even department specific, on a case by case basis, you have a certain call out, you have a certain case that comes across as in uniform, and you're like, do you need investigations? You have that supervisor there that said, yeah, I've been there. This warrants investigations, calling it, that this certainly applies to waking an investigator up in the middle of the night to have them call out, or to say, no, we can handle this as uniform.
Right. On the flip side, we don't need to call in just because there's a victim.
Right.
Just because it's a larger scene or 2 scenes. This is enough that right now, with our manpower, patrol can handle.
Yeah.
One time I heard an old timer say, patrol takes the reports and CID closes the cases. Mm-hmm. And that's true to some extent.
It is.
However, there's a lot of closed cases that come out of patrol.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like agencies lose track of what a great job uniform patrol could do, given the right supervision.
Yeah, right.
You don't always need to call in a detective just because there was a XYZ crime.
Right.
if you've got the manpower and the time, and the expertise, or people that need the expertise to become better patrol officers. If it's a slow enough department where you have a patrolman that can go and secure a search warrant, why not?
Yeah.
Why call in a detective
Right.
to go wake him or her up,
Right.
come out to the scene, assess, okay, I need to go get a search warrant, hold the scene.
Yeah.
If you have the time, not a lot of agencies have that time.
Right.
And I get that.
Right.
But if it's available, that patrol officer could learn oodles of valuable experience going to get that search warrant.
Yeah.
Or the arrest warrant.
Right.
Excuse me. Or serving the arrest warrant.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not a rapid flowing event with exigent circumstances, with the foot chase going into the home,
right.
If you've got where perp is, then go get the warrant, come back and serve it, and let uniform serve it. Mm-hmm. There were plenty of times that my agency allowed that to happen.
Okay.
Plenty of times where, for whatever reason, that Thursday night was not busy.
Yeah.
And there were nobody called in sick. Okay. Nobody was out for training.
Right.
It was a full stack. Mm-hmm. We had all the officers on the roster there. There was the time.
Yeah.
For me to go get the arrest warrant. Mm-hmm. We knew where bad guy was. Come back, serve the arrest warrant.
Yeah.
I learned a lot by taking those warrants out and having that interaction with the magistrate, learning which magistrates wanted what type of information.
Right.
That was invaluable.
Right.
At building those relationships with the magistrates, right. Where, at first they ask a lot of questions, as they
right.
should.
Yeah. Right.
As they should.
Right.
Learning now this new officer they've never seen before. Okay.
Right.
They've seen you twice.
Yep.
Now they've seen you 5 times,
yep.
20 times. And you're bringing forth good cases.
Right.
With solid probable cause. And knowing, for long, I had no idea what to wit mean.
Right.
On the warrant, to wit.
Yeah.
To wit. To what?
To wit.
To what?
Yeah.
But learning the language needed, how much or how little to put in the warrant, because sometimes you could put too much information,
right?
And then that can come against you in court later.
Right.
But
absolutely.
As a new patrol sergeant, any funny stories to share?
I will say this.
And I understand you got to be careful because you're still employed there with this agency, and
right.
But anything to share?
I will say this: if you have the capabilities as a slick sleeve patrolman, or not necessarily have the capabilities, but just be aware of trying every avenue of exhaust your leads, exhaust your, what's the right word? Exhaust your.
You want me to go get the encyclopedia?
Yeah, if you could. Exhaust your.
I don't know what I did with my phone. There's a lot of crickets here. We're waiting.
Exhaust your options.
Okay. Yeah.
Exhaust your options before you reach out to a supervisor, because a lot of the officers get caught up in the moment and they don't realize, because emotion can play a lot into it. And when you have that passionate parent that's dealing with that juvenile, because we all love juveniles, and
Jimmy won't get up and go to school.
He won't. He keeps wanting to play PlayStation and does not want to go to school. And
Far Cry 6 was just released.
We've done 13 years of trying to correct his behavior, and we want you to solve it in 5 minutes. It especially if Jimmy has a history with juvenile justice, exhaust your options before calling a supervisor out. And something as simple as calling juvenile justice and saying, hey, Jimmy is acting out with mom and dad again and running away from home and being combative with mom and dad and being destructive. And so, just trying to exhaust all your options before calling a supervisor out. That would be a suggestion that I have.
Great. Okay.
That would be great. If you could come in on Saturday, that would be great.
Okay.
Okay.
I have one.
Yes. Tell me.
Kids, learn your traffic code. Because if you know the traffic code inside and out, and you've got suspicion, not PC, you've got suspicion,
right,
that something's not right in car ahead of you, knowing your traffic code will give you the PC to investigate that suspicion.
Right.
Tag light. It's a 15-cent peanut bulb in my career that helped me find more wanted people, stolen property, stolen vehicles.
He got me my first seizure at the agency that we worked with.
That's right. It was a Tahoe or a Suburban.
It was a Suburban. That's exactly right.
It was a Gold, and that agency had no idea what to do with the knowledge that I had about seizures and confiscations and crystal meth. Anyway, know your traffic code.
Right.
The peanut bulb and the tag light is the best. If you're night patrol. Now, if you're day patrol, you need to know some of the other ones.
Right.
Like visible emissions for more than 10 seconds.
Right. Something as basic as brake light, or even the tread depth on tires.
You gotta stop the car first to see that. I mean,
you got to.
That's the secondary.
Or when you're stopped at the red light.
That's you're gonna jump out with your depth finder. Excuse me, I gotta look at Lincoln's head here.
When you can see the steels showing, or the belts, when you can see the nylon.
All right, traffic Nazi
looking through. You got to do something.
That's one of those. Oh, you're asking for a second ticket. I'll be right back. And it's amazing how many people beg. Officer, one ticket's not enough.
Yeah.
My attitude says I need a second one.
Right.
Or a third.
You can't write anything other than speeding. You can't do that.
No.
Speeding is the only thing you can write for.
Yeah. I loved one where dude told me that only troopers had jurisdiction on interstates. And I said, oh, really? Well, I'll see you on June 6th at 9 a.m.
Press hard. There's 5 copies there.
5 copies. Well, that's the old days. That's the old days when they were carbon copy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Every once in a while, we can still do that when the ticket printer is on the fritz.
Okay.
We can still press hard.
Go back old school.
Right.
So I'm going to tell you an embarrassing moment.
I love the smell of that carbon.
The carbon is great. Morning, noon, or night. To kind of jolt maybe some funny memories of your career. Not of you, but of your career.
Sure.
I guess I was about 2 years on, so still rookie status.
Okay.
But some experience. I got selected to help narcotics do a takedown, where I was the patrol car to initiate the traffic stop for narcotics to then do their job.
Yeah.
Well, I was told that there would quite possibly be gunplay.
Okay.
Bad guy was known to have more than one gun.
Mm-hmm.
He was known to be in company of people with very dangerous guns. Not that any gun is not dangerous, but
right.
Those that you see in movies kind of
right.
gun, double fisting Uzis,
yeah.
kind of thing.
Double wheels.
Yeah. Scarface kind of stuff. Little friends all over the place. So, good rookie, having been certified with my shotgun.
Yeah.
I had it with me.
Okay.
So it was a felony stop, felony takedown.
So this is an 870.
It was a Remington, or it is. I still have it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's altered a little bit. It's got some furniture on it now.
Okay.
So we do a felony stop, and there was another uniform car that was giving the directions. So I was covering off since I had the scatter gun.
Tell for those that don't know what a felony stop is.
Yes, Sarge. Be delighted. So, felony stop is a high risk traffic stop where the probability of something not going right. So you're on the offense of this traffic stop. You know that a crime has just been committed. You know that there is the high likelihood of firearms or a very bad person inside the car. So you have at least two cars, two patrol cars that are being used. You open up your car door, you stand behind it, you use your loudspeaker to tell the passengers one by one to get out. And there's a sequence to that. And then you have them walk backwards to the cover officer, who then puts the handcuffs on, walks them back, and then by then hopefully you have a second or third cover officer. Indeed. If there's multiple suspects. So I was one of two vehicles, patrol vehicles. My Chevy Lumina was in the shop for routine maintenance. So I was in a spare. It was a Crown Vic.
Okay.
1994.
Easy.
Crown Victoria.
Okay.
Loved that car the 2 days that I drove it. Although, I'll get to this in a minute. All right. So, we call out bad guys. Everybody's handcuffed, and we're in the middle of a T intersection that has two lanes going either direction.
Yeah.
With a center suicide or left turn lane.
Right.
The T'd road, the crossing road, is also a 4-lane road with a center turn lane to turn left.
Yeah.
All right. So 6-lane intersection.
Okay.
We're in the middle of it. And it's a pretty well-traveled intersection. So there were lots of cars that got stopped because of our shenanigans.
Right.
All right. So narcotics comes in, they got their masks on.
Yeah. What time of day?
Probably about 3:34. I mean, it was right out of evening watch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Almost 5:00 traffic time.
Okay.
Which in Metro Atlanta is from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m.
Yes.
Daily. Weekends included.
Right.
So masks, they're in their ski mask and their vest that say police and their cargo shorts,
Right.
They do their sandals. They rush in, they do their search. We call the tow truck.
Yeah.
Hook the car up, send it off to headquarters to be further searched.
Right.
To clear the road.
Right.
Because we had We had traffic stacked up.
Got to get him back going.
Got to get, DOT says, get it back open. So got to get it back open. Well, I go to get back into my car and still running because it's summertime in Atlanta. I locked the door. This was a spare car that only came with one key, which was in the ignition. Windows up, AC on. Everybody else has left. So I'm standing outside of a patrol car with its lights still on in the middle of the intersection, blocking the two lanes that are going in one direction with my shotgun slung.
Nothing to see here.
Continue
moving.
Keep moving. So I call my sergeant because I've exhausted all my means short of breaking the window.
Well done.
Yes. Call my sergeant and asked him to bring the Slim Jim, which was recently removed from the precinct because we were no longer allowed to do car unlocks.
All right.
He was at lunch with the lieutenant.
You don't do that.
Yeah. He said, I'll be there when I get there. So he finished his lunch with the lieutenant, drove the miles to the mall to borrow mall security's Slim Jim. Taking the long way there, I know this because I stood outside for 45 minutes, directing traffic with my shotgun around my marked patrol car with the lights still on, and people wondering, what is this exercise? One of my most embarrassing moments in my police career. It was it took a little while to get over that one. Yeah. Anything like that for you? Anything?
There's so many.
Just one.
I can remember. Thankfully, it wasn't during the 3 o'clock hour of Metro Atlanta's wonderful traffic. But not long after getting off FTO, you get that great vehicle. Being a new officer, you get that great vehicle.
But it's your first one.
It's the first one.
It is your first
It's
one.
well used.
Yes.
Well used. Rode hard, put up wet, as they say.
As they say. I've heard that before.
From the rain. And this one had a significant amount of miles on it. As I said, thankfully, this was later in the evening. I was on evening watch. This was when we were still on 10s. But I started to notice some transmission slippage.
And being a mechanic, you were easily identified.
It was. I had some experience with some transmission slippage before. And so I started to notice things were going downhill rather quickly with this vehicle, and came up to a somewhat major intersection and got the red light and didn't think that this was going to be a good idea to stop for. But I did. I felt it safer that I needed to stop. So I did. And I had called thankfully, my field training officer was on shift that night, called him, made him aware. He was coming up behind me to follow me to the shop to drop the car off to get a spare. Well, the light turned green, and I took my foot off the brake and pressed the accelerator, and the vehicle made a lot of noise, but there wasn't a whole lot of action to follow.
Okay.
It did move, but not with the quickness. And I saw the light change from red to green, then to yellow, and then back to red again.
Okay.
But I had not cleared the intersection yet. I had made it past the stop bar.
Okay.
So I had already committed to the moment.
Yeah.
So there was no giving up at that point. I just had to commit. And
to finishing the movement.
To finishing the movement.
Yes.
And so I saw the light turn red, and as I said, there was a whole lot of noise going on from the vehicle, but not a whole lot of movement. And so so luckily it was able to get to the hill and crested the hill.
Okay.
And momentum was working in my favor to get me to the shop.
Did you get a little assistance from the push bumper behind you?
There may have been some bump drafting going on.
Okay.
Thankfully, but yeah, that was the end of that vehicle. May she rest in peace.
I'll share another.
Yes.
That may make you glad you did not follow the route of canine.
Okay.
So my dog was a chocolate lab, female chocolate lab. She was 43 pounds, tiny, but a jam up, jelly tight narcotics dog.
Can we say her name?
We can't. Ginger. Yeah, canine Ginger. She was an amazing dog. She made me look like I was a good handler, right? I was mediocre at best. She was a jam up dog. So I was walking with her as part of a nearby school campus, college campus, during its kind of career day, where local law enforcement, first responders came out. I think the county PD came out with its EOD robot and command vehicle, and I think the SO brought its drag car.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's right.
Beat the heat. That's right. So I was there with Canine Ginger, and we're walking through, and it was summer between sessions or semesters. So we went inside the student center to get some water for her and for me. You always think it's okay. Take the dog inside because the dog's already been outside. There in the student center, in the area where there was snack food. It wasn't the cafeteria, but it was, you could get bagels, coffee,
chocolate bars.
But no, there was cooked food.
Okay.
There. I mean, they served food there. It just wasn't the cafeteria. Walking to the counter, we cross off of the tile floor to the green carpet floor.
Okay.
And I'm walking, and all of a sudden, I'm pulling. And I look back, and Ginger is done with breakfast. So much so that I think dinner from the night before was still being worked on nutritionally. And large steamer. Because multiple large steamers. Because as I was walking, she wasn't. And I gave a tug a couple of times, and I looked back, and she had already kind of moved. So it was kind of a walk and dump. This might be the Knock and Talk show, but that was the walk and dump. And students were there. The staff members or the employees in the food sections were like, that was the second most embarrassing moment of my law enforcement career. Having to, it's fine, nothing to see here. Go away.
Move along.
Move along. She's
Move
moving.
along.
Movements along. You move along. Having to, go leave that there.
Right.
To go get something to clean it up with, and afraid she's going to continue. Because we already did this outside. That's what I'm saying. We were outside. We came inside, but we only came inside because we were done outside.
Right.
That was awful, embarrassing. And then I clean it all up and I go to put it in the trash can, and the manager for that concession stand, for lack of better terms, comes running out in her very broken English, yelling at me, "No poo. No poo in can. No poo in can."
Like you had control over it. You can't leave that here, sir.
So there you go.
It's not where this goes.
That's not where this goes. No. You take that to the bathroom. You can't throw it in the trash can. There's food in the trash can. In a food area. So anyway,
we have health codes we need to be worried about.
Yeah, health codes in the trash can that we have to worry about. So anyway, that was my second most embarrassing story. Yeah.
I can't think. I'm afraid I've had so many.
It is hard on the spot. That's what she said.
To think of one in particular.
Yeah.
But that's good that you can have those moments of being humbled.
Oh my goodness.
In your career to.
So that's like lesson
back down.
Like 201 in canine school. Make sure before you take the dog inside anywhere, the dog's finished outside.
Yes, right.
So that's common practice. You walk outside until
indeed
evacuation has occurred.
Right.
Full evacuation.
Right.
And what was left outside should have been full evacuation, but
right.
It wasn't the case.
Is
this beating a dead horse?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
I
didn't experience it myself, but I did hear of the agency that I went with after the agency that we were with.
Yeah.
The canine handler that had since retired. I remember them doing a demonstration at a local Hindu temple.
My goodness.
And they had a particular pool. It was a sacred pool. So nobody, it wasn't the traditional swimming pool.
Right.
It was sacred. And
so like a baptism pool?
Yeah, similar.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't even think they were doing baptisms in that pool. That's how sacred it was. But I remember them doing the demonstration, and they were using tennis balls as a reward system.
Okay. For
those canines. And the ball got away from the handler and the dog and went into the pool.
Oh no.
The dog goes after the ball.
Oh,
into the pool, into the sacred pool.
Oh, I bet that went off like a turd in a punch bowl. I had that one loaded.
It was. So glad I didn't get canine.
Yeah. I mean, lots of rewards.
Yes.
Lots of rewards.
Right.
But there's also, when you're dealing with another living creature and trying to instill your will on that creature, sometimes there's revolts.
Right.
You're just like children.
Right.
They push back.
Right. Yeah.
Or push out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can't.
Yeah, I got nothing.
But it does humble you. It does keep you grounded. There's not a lot of prediction that goes along with that.
No. And at certain times, no. I mean, there's warning signs that they teach you to look for.
Right.
But there's not a lot of reaction time to prevent once those warning signs start kicking in.
Right.
You need to either be really close or just hang on for the ride.
Right. Be able to recover.
Yeah. So we are now into an hour and a half of the second episode, part two, if you will, of the Josh Morris episode 5.2. Now, Sergeant Morris, what is ahead of you in your law enforcement career? Not knowing that 5 years ago, CID wasn't on the radar. 5 years forward, Sergeant Stripes probably weren't on the radar yet.
Right.
Excuse me. What are you looking toward career-wise to accomplish while you have the stripes?
Okay.
Sorry, little wardrobe issue here.
There is some joy in not knowing.
Ooh, that's pretty profound,
isn't it?
Yeah.
There was some not knowing when making the step from uniform to investigations, and even turning away from even to back up from the agency that you and I were with to the agency that I went with. There was some variables that were unknown. There were some unknowns from making that step, from the step from after that, from uniform to investigations, and even to investigations to supervision. There were unknowns. I'd even turned down the opportunity to go from investigations to supervision before. I didn't think I was ready for it yet.
That's smart.
And
we had said earlier, take the test, take the promotion anytime they come available.
Right.
However, at that first agency I was at, I never took the corporal's exam. I didn't feel like I was had the experience to run a shift in the absence of a sergeant at that time in my career. So I didn't do the corporal's exam. So sometimes you do need that inner reflection. Realize maybe your own limitations before just jumping in. But I still sort of stand behind the blanket statement. Anytime it comes available, you should consider research and take the exam or take the promotion when presented.
Right.
With the caveat of you got to know yourself.
Yes. Yeah, it was, of course you don't know this really at the time, but it was a win-win for me. Staying where I was gave me more experience. At the same time, had I taken the test, it would have given me the experience of taking the test.
Yeah.
At that initial time for supervision, we hadn't gone with the outside promotional process, bringing in that outside agency to utilize for assessments. We hadn't gone with that procedure yet. So it would have given me that experience of going before an interview panel and talking to people that I hadn't recognized before, or I don't know, going through that interview, that lovingly interview process that we love to go through and talk about ourselves. It would have given me that experience, but I chose not to do that. I didn't think it was the right time for me. Looking back, there was those times where I said, I wish I would have done it. I should have done it. I would have been, this far in my career, or this part, I would have been this far in my progress in my career. But looking back on it now, I wouldn't have had the experience that I have Now, in investigations, I would have shorted myself a certain number of years in investigations.
And a certain number of cases that were groundbreaking in your experience.
Right. And to go back on what we said before about, even in the uniform level of search warrants and even into arrest warrants, it's something that I thought as a uniformed officer, search warrants were something that investigators did.
Yeah.
That was only investigations. We didn't touch that as a uniformed officer. And it wasn't until investigations did I make that discovery. And I wish as a uniformed officer that I would have had that experience to do that, to have that search warrant.
Yeah. I mean, there are templates, right? Where you can go in and just change certain elements or change the crime or change the location.
Yeah.
Which makes it, writing a search warrant can be extremely time consuming if you're starting from scratch.
Right.
Making sure you have the right language in place, making sure that it meets the format that the magistrate judge in Georgia jurisdiction, the magistrate judge wants to see it in, that the DA's office wants to see it in, that the prosecution will accept and that the defense will accept as standard.
Right.
So now, because of that, there are templates that you could use, just plug and play.
Yeah.
Change the element of the crime, change victim's name, change location.
Yeah.
Right. But the experience, not having to write it from scratch, but the experience of testifying for a search warrant is invaluable.
Right.
You're supposed to go in and you're supposed to put the search warrant down in front of the judge, and the warrant's supposed to stand on its own.
On its own.
You're not supposed to give any additional
Shouldn't have
to, right? If you do, you learn, I need to write a better search warrant.
Right. This needs to be included.
Right. Because now your verbal testimony is part of the discovery. And that means the defense now has, there's something else that's not in this search warrant.
What's he trying to hide?
Yeah. So now it may not stand on its own, whereas it's supposed to.
Right.
I agree with you. Writing a search warrant is complicated until you've done a dozen of them.
Right.
And then knowing how to word things, where to put things in, because, depending on the crime, you're looking for the smallest thing possible.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for, at the time, marijuana was, a pretty common, or crack, meth.
Yep.
You put in small shard.
Yep.
Small green leafy material.
Yep.
And where is that hidden?
In the smallest location.
In the smallest location, which means you can look
anywhere
and everywhere. Yeah. So from the sergeant's corner, learn to write search warrants.
Yeah.
If you decide to get out of law enforcement, that attention to detail will help you in any number of other reports and other career fields, being able to write to that specification.
Absolutely.
It's a good tool and skill to have.
It is.
And being the guy that or gal that your department calls on to write a search warrant, that's pretty cool and can bring its own honor and recognition.
Yeah. It speaks volume for as far as the supervision and investigations go, to have a uniformed officer reach out to you or the investigators to say, how can I write this better? Or let me look over some of your search warrants to know how I can write mine better. That speaks volume.
Yeah.
If you are looking for advancement into CID, that speaks volume for them for you to have that interest, to looking forward and to think outside the typical uniformed officer's box or way of thinking. Yeah.
Not my job.
Yeah.
I wrote the report. I'll hold the scene.
Yeah.
Now ask how you can help.
Right.
whether you're looking to get into CID or not, if you're looking to get promoted, become useful to everybody.
Right.
So, well, as we start to wrap this up, one bit of advice that you could offer as now a young supervisor, having been on the other side recently, now on the supervision side, to the young officers who are watching, because there's certainly more of those than there are supervisors that are watching, but for the young guys that are just, and girls that are, men and women, sorry, that are just getting started, what's the one piece of advice, whether it's career or otherwise, that you would give to them if they were new coming to your shift?
Yeah. Go the extra mile. I know that's generally said with any career, but that's something that is looked for. I know in law enforcement, that's something that's looked for and desired. As far as supervision is concerned, you're looking for that officer that's willing to go beyond what's required of them. You're looking for that officer that's willing to, as we just got done saying, go to CID and say, how can I make this better? How can I perfect my craft? How can I perfect, go beyond what I've done so far and make it better, make it to where this is a solid case to where CID isn't even required? Or let's just say in K9, how can I set up a perimeter for K9 before they're called? By the way, if you're on perimeter, stay in your car. Don't get out.
Yeah. Unless you were in hot pursuit and on the heels of the bad guy, don't go into the woods.
Do not engage.
Don't do it.
How can I set up a better perimeter? How can I be mindful of wind direction? How can I make the scene safe? How can I control the situation before K9 shows up, before investigation shows up, and take control of the situation? Don't be afraid of stepping beyond what uniform says you can do. Don't be afraid of stepping beyond that. And if you're not comfortable with that, reach out and ask questions. To step out and show that initiative, show that willingness to go above what's required of you.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, as a former patrol sergeant, but also a former detective, if a uniform officer came to me at a scene and said, "How can I help?" or "What could I have done better?" I didn't mind answering those two questions and offering that advice or showcasing maybe some of the things that I would have preferred that he or she do to make my job easier responding to the scene. I think that's solid advice. Yeah.
You taught me well.
Gosh, I'm blushing again.
Flattery will get you everything.
Flattery will get you everything. You remembered, yes.
There are several things that we haven't covered yet.
Oh, but I mean, there's enough info for episode 3A and 3B. My advice would be this.
Yes.
And it starts at the beginning of the shift. If you're on time, you're late.
Yep.
I'll say it again. If you're on time, you're late. Especially if you're relieving a shift.
Yep.
You need to be there early enough to get the turnover.
Yep.
And send those officers who have already been on shift, send them home. That's the way I was taught. The way I was raised in my law enforcement career. If you are on time, you're late. Yeah. So, and that sets the tone for the shift.
It does.
So, well, This has been the second hour and the Part B episode, or Part B section of Episode 5. Josh Morris, we didn't even get into the chaplain. We barely scratched the surface of sergeantship. We didn't even talk about racing the patrol cars in the rain, over speed bumps, and into the lake.
Or movies.
There's a host, ladies and gentlemen. There will be another episode with Josh Morris. Thank you so much for joining in. This is the Knock&Talk show. I am your host, Patrick Faulkner. And everybody, stay well, be safe. We'll see you again. Say goodbye, Josh.
Goodbye, Josh.